Good morning, everybody. I believe we're live. So excited to have you here. You're going to love today's episode. Let me just double check that we are live. As you're coming in, let me know where you're coming in from, what part of the world or Australia. Yeah, we're absolutely live. Just going to click a couple of things here and just tag a couple of people. So, so let me know where you're coming in from, what part of the world. Are you Australia or somewhere different? I'm really, really excited to meet you all. And I'm very excited that today we are episode 4 and the post is just beat the horn. Hang on a minute. I'm back. It is always the way, isn't it, that when you go to do something, let me just make some room, someone is always knocking or interrupt. So really excited for today. We are episode 4 of The Real Shift. So, and I hope the dogs don't bark. Let me share my screen and we're going to get started so that I hope you can all see that. So it's looking pretty good. So today we're actually going to start our masterclass, our presentation with a question. And I want you to be honest here and write it down. Write down the answer. Who were you before you became a nurse? And not the ward you worked on, okay? Not how many years experience that you have. Not what your specialty is, but who were you? Let me just silence that because otherwise it's going to continue. Yeah. Because you were someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's mother. You're a woman with dreams and hobbies and a particular way of seeing the world. And you had things that you loved that had nothing to do with clinical care. And you went into nursing most likely because you generally believed you had something to offer other people, something that you wanted to contribute, to make a difference, to matter in someone's hardest moments. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing to carry into a career. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. And you stopped being a woman who is a nurse and you became a nurse who was also a woman. And that inversion is quiet and it doesn't announce itself. It happens one shift at a time, one sacrifice at a time, one swallowed frustration at a time, until one day you sit still long enough and you realize that you can't quite remember who you were before you put on the uniform. Today's topic's not about burnout and it's not about resilience because most nurses don't have a resilience problem. They have an identity problem. So this is episode 4 of The Real Shift, the identity crisis no one warns you about. And the tagline for today is one that I want you to carry with you long after this is over. You are so much more than the uniform. And now, before we get in and we'll talk about, I'm going to introduce 2 archetypes. And I want to explain why so many extraordinary women become the first archetype. Like I said before, most nurses don't have a resilience problem, they have an identity problem. And before you disagree with me, let me explain why. Over 16 years working in emergency, I've met thousands of nurses. I've watched extraordinary women care for complete strangers with compassion, courage, skill. And I've watched those same women walk to their cars, shift after shift, completely exhausted. Now, I'm not just talking about physical exhaustion. I'm talking emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Women who could recognize themselves in a pattern within seconds, but couldn't recognize how much they changed themselves or how much they themselves have changed. And that isn't because nurses are weak. It's because we become incredibly good at adapting. The problem is sometimes we adapt so well to an unhealthy environment that we stop noticing what it's costing us. Today, I want to give you something I wish someone had given me years ago. Language. Because once you have the language, you stop blaming yourself, you stop thinking that you're failing, you stop wondering why everyone else seems to cope better, and instead, you begin to understand what has actually happened. And that's where the real change begins. So there's 4 ways that nursing changes a woman. Okay? And before I introduce the 2 archetypes I want to teach, I think we need to answer the more important question. How does a caring, compassionate woman slowly become exhausted, disconnected, and unsure of who she is? Because it doesn't happen because she's weak. It happens because nursing changes us in 4 very predictable ways. And once we understand the 4 changes, everything else is going to make sense. So what changes? Nervous system is number 1. Every shift you work, your nervous system is doing something, it's doing its job, okay? Fight and flight. We spoke about this back in episode 1 or 2, I believe. It is scanning constantly. It's looking for alarms. It's looking for subtle changes in a patient's color or breathing pattern. It's looking for deterioration that is coming before it has arrived on the monitor. And for the colleague who needs backup, for the family member who's about to escalate, for the emergency behind the curtain that you haven't reached yet. So it's hypervigilant, and it's not a flaw. It's a clinical skill that we were trained into it. We're rewarded for it. Okay? In some cases, it saved lives. The problem is your nervous system does not know when the shift ends. Okay? When you take off the uniform, when you drive home, when you're sitting at the dinner table, when you're in bed at 11 p.m., your nervous system is still scanning for threats. It's still alert. It's still waiting for the next alarm. It's still anticipating the deterioration that hasn't arrived yet. So this is why you can't switch off. This is why the sleep that shouldn't restore you does. But this is why the sleep that should restore you doesn't. This is why lying awake at night, reviewing the shift, replaying the decisions, rehearsing the ones that are coming tomorrow. Your nervous system's adapted. It's learned urgency. And it doesn't automatically unlearn it when you walk out the door. So is this sounding familiar? What is your nervous system telling you right now? Identity is our second one. Let me ask you something, and be honest and pop it in the chat here. I'm going to start reading some of the comments shortly. If someone asks you to describe yourself, would the first thing that you say, I am a nurse? So for most of the women in the community, that is yes, okay? And it happens so gradually that there is no single moment where you choose it. Nursing becomes the dominant identity over years, the one commitment at a time, the one shift that you took on when you were already stretched. One conversation where someone introduced you as a nurse first and you felt the title settle over you, like it was the most accurate thing anyone had said. So the profession didn't just give you a job, it gave you self, an entire framework for who you are, what your worth is, what your purpose with. And the cost of that gift is that everything else starts to shrink. The woman who existed before the registration number, the woman who had interests and a sense of humor and a body that was hers, goals and dreams, she gets quieter. And the nurse side of it actually gets louder. We're going to go deeper into that in a moment when we meet the 2 archetypes. But for now, just hold it. Identity fusion is not vanity. It is not a midlife crisis. It happens when a profession fills every available space and you let it. Because for a long time, it was the most meaningful thing in your life. Relationships. That's the third way nurses change as a woman. And this one is quite often painful to name. Nurses will spend their entire shift regulating other people. Patients who are frightened, families who are grieving, colleagues who are overwhelmed, doctors who are under pressure. Every interaction requires emotional attunement. The ability to read the room, manage the energy, hold steady while everything around you is in motion. And by the time most nurses walk through their own front door, there's very little emotional capacity left. And not because they don't love the people at home, not because they don't want to be present, but because the tank's been running on empty for hours and there's not enough left to give anybody else. So then partners, our husbands, our children, they start to feel the distance. Children particularly will feel like that we're unavailable. They won't open up to us because they don't want to bother us. We're already under enough stress. Okay. And I've seen this myself in my own children and in my own relationship. And I didn't realize how disconnected I was from being a wife and a mother until I'd already gotten to the end, till I'd already hit burnout. And I wasn't emotionally available for my children, for my husband. And so as nurses, we carry the guilt of it all without anyone ever explaining to us that what we're experiencing is not a failure of love. It is a predictable consequence of the emotional labor required by the job. You haven't checked out, you're just depleted. And there's a big difference, okay? Where are you depleting? Where are you putting your job before your family, before yourself? Number 4, the body, our health. Okay, this is the physical component. It is the one that's easiest to see and the hardest to agree with. We've got cortisol and adrenaline running at elevated levels, shift after shift, without adequate recovery. We've got decision fatigue from making high-stakes clinical judgments for hours at a time. Sleep that's interrupted by early starts, night shift, late finishes. Nervous system that cannot settle. A body that's wired and exhausted simultaneously, which is one of the most disorientating physical physical experiences a nurse can have. So you're tired enough to cry, but you're also too activated to sleep. Both are true at the same time. And the body carries all of this forward, shift after shift, until eventually it stops absorbing quietly and starts speaking loudly. Pain that doesn't resolve, gut disruption, an immune system that keeps failing, hormonal patterns that have shifted. Okay, and if you're currently in perimenopause, that is then compounded. A body that used to bounce back no longer does. So the body adapted to serve the demands being placed on it. It did exactly what it was designed to do. It is simply that those adaptations were never intended to be permanent. Okay, let's just read some of the comments that are coming through. I can see them coming through. Yeah, many people are relating to this. So, do you know who this person is? It's okay if you don't. Before I introduce the 2 patterns or the 2 archetypes, I want to show you or explain to you what an archetype actually is, because the word often gets misused. When people hear archetypes, they sometimes think it means labeled, being put in a box, related, reduced to a category. And that's not what this is. Archetypes are patterns of behavior, patterns of thinking, patterns of coping. They help us understand the roles we have unconsciously stepped into in order to survive our environment. So it's not a concept that I invented. Archetypes were first described by psychiatrist Dr. Carl Jung, who noticed that across cultures and history, human beings tend to express the same recurring pattern. Universal roles that showed up time and time again because they reflected something fundamental about how people adapted and survived. So Jung was not talking about nursing specifically. He was just talking about the human psyche. But the principle holds completely true in this profession. In nursing, archetypes will show up strongly because we work in environments that demand a great deal from us, emotionally, physically, mentally. Over time, we learn to adapt. We develop coping styles, ways of functioning that get us through the long shifts, complex situation, and constant responsibility. And those coping styles then become our identity. And this is where the archetypes come in. And the reason why this is useful is that archetypes give us language. And language for things many nurses feel but struggle to understand. Why do I feel so capable at work but depleted at home? Why do I keep saying yes when I'm stretched past capacity? Why do I feel like I'm holding everyone else together, or everything together for everyone else, and nobody is holding anything for me? Okay? It feels like you just give, and people take. And when you recognize the pattern you're living in, something important happens. And you stop thinking something's wrong with you, and you start understanding what your nervous system has been doing to survive. So when I introduce the 2 archetypes, just listen with curiosity. Because the moment you recognize yourself in a pattern, you gain awareness. And awareness means that you're no longer running on autopilot. You get to start choosing how you show up instead of just simply reacting to what's demanded of you. Now, over the years, I've noticed that most nurses are living in two states, and we're going to go into these shortly in a minute. The first is what I call the survival nurse, and the second is the nurse that many women are quietly becoming, the calm matriarch. And here's the interesting thing. Most nurses move between these without even realizing it. So you're not permanently fixed in one, but most of us will spend far more time in the first one than we recognize. And so today I want to walk you through both, but not so you can label yourself. It's just so that you can find yourself. And there's a big difference. And it's okay if you don't recognize yourself in these patterns, because at the end, Mariah can put a link into a quiz that we've just developed. We'll do that at the end, Mariah. We'll share the link at the end. But it'll tell you where you're sitting. And sometimes you could be sitting in the middle, which we're going to get to. So let me introduce you to the survival nurse. She is incredibly capable. She is the one who handles everything. She is calm in emergency. She keeps the team moving. She takes on extra when the ward's short. People rely on her. Underneath that competence, there's also an exhaustion that she cannot fully name. So she may be a mum. She may be juggling shifts and family life. She's capable, responsible, needed. She could be 25, she could be 55. She could be nursing for the last 30 years. She could be a new graduate nurse in her first 12 months. She could also just be a student that hasn't even graduated yet. Okay? So she could be a mother of newborns, teenagers, empty nester, wondering what is coming next. She could really love nursing. She's dedicated her life to it. She has purpose and meaning. Or maybe she's quietly feeling resentful of it. She's functional, but she is tired. So can you relate to the survival nurse? Is there something here that I haven't named? Maybe there's something else that the survival nurse has got that I haven't said. The core characteristics, okay, so she's hyper responsible. She carries more than her share at work and at home, always. She's role identified first. I am a nurse is the primary way she understands herself. Not a part of how she understands, but the primary way. Self-sacrifice. So her needs will come last, often unconsciously. She's not choosing to neglect herself. She's just stopped registering that there is a self to neglect. She's got a high tolerance for stress. She endures things that should not be normalized, and she's seen things that should not be normalized. And because she endures them well, the environment, so others assume she's fine. She's got it together. She is the queen. Okay? She knows what's going on anywhere, and she's calm on the outside, but inside, she's not calm. Okay? People pleasing. She avoids conflict. She over-explains her boundaries before she's even finished stating them. She asks for permission. She apologizes before she has a sentence or asks for something. Or maybe she's a couple of minutes late for work, or maybe she forgot to write something and she is forever apologizing. Externally competent, okay, but she's internally depleted. She's become so skilled at looking fine that she's started to believe it herself. It's a part of life. It is nursing. This is what I signed up for. So in practical terms, her days off are catch-up days, laundry, appointments, groceries, emotional labor for everybody else around her. She'll miss school events. She carries guilt well. She works shifts. She misses holidays. She holds everything together quietly. But nobody sees that she's just holding it together. They just see the held together result. Okay? She could still love nursing, or she may feel numb towards it. She questions leaving, but she doesn't know how. She doesn't know whether or not she could leave nursing. She doesn't know what she'll do next. But on the other side, she doesn't even know if nursing is actually what she wants. She wanders sometimes in the car, sometimes at 2 a.m. How did my life start to feel like this? So she's lost. She doesn't know who she is outside the uniform. And over time, something starts to happen to that survival nurse because she becomes very good at functioning. She slowly starts to disconnect herself. And that's where the identity fracture begins. Think about this for a moment. The very qualities that you've been praised for throughout your nursing career, okay, compassion, responsibility, reliability, selflessness, calm under pressure, putting others first, okay, the qualities that make you an exceptional nurse are often the same qualities without boundaries slowly deplete the woman behind the uniform. I'd like to say boom. Okay, that right there, that statement right there. The qualities that make you an exceptional nurse are often the same qualities that, without boundaries, slowly deplete the woman behind the uniform. And not because those qualities are wrong, but because they've never been balanced with permission to care for the woman behind the uniform. Okay? We're always told, it is ingrained in us, the patient's needs must come first. The patient must come first. The ward must come first. The team must come first. Everyone else must come first. This is what you signed up for. And this is where the identity fracture begins. This one, clinical excellence without self-leadership eventually becomes self-abandonment. And I absolutely love that. And it's not about anti-nursing. It's not about anti-care. It's just simply saying that clinical excellence is wonderful. It's needed. Okay, we need clinical excellence. But if nobody teaches you how to lead yourself first with the same care that you lead others, eventually something's going to give. So nursing didn't ask you to stop being a woman. But somewhere along the way, many of us forgot that we were one. So the identity fracture. There's two versions of her. There's the functional nurse that everybody sees, and there's the private self that no one sees. The functional nurse, she's efficient, professional, dependable. She handles it all. She's the one people call to when things go wrong because you know that she's got your back. You know that you can depend on her. She's the steady one. She's calm under pressure. She keeps the team together. And then you got the private self. She's the one that's sitting in the car shift after shift. She's crying. She's wondering how or when life started to feel like this. She's quiet. She's invisible. She's exhausted in ways that she never found the words for. And so that fracture doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly. Missed holiday, one swallowed frustration, one ignored body sign, just pushing through. And eventually the role side gets louder and louder. And this is where you lose yourself. I am a nurse first, okay? And the self-quiet, the other person, you are you. You are a wife. You are a mother, someone's daughter, someone's sister. That side gets quieter. So there is no big announcement that it's been taken over. There's no single moment in nursing when you decide that nursing or being a nurse will become your whole identity. It happens quietly. It accumulates over years. And each individual sacrifice looks sensible in isolation. It is only when you stand back and look at the years collectively that the shape becomes visible. And by the time most nurses know the fracture, the functional nurse has been running the show for years. The private self has just gone quiet, not because she stopped existing, but because nobody's spoken to her in years. There's an exercise that I want you to do. You don't have to do it now, or you can. It's just sit there, close your eyes, take a deep breath, maybe take a couple, just soften your shoulders. And just ask yourself quietly, what does my private self need? What does my private self want? And just listen to what she's telling you, because subconsciously she's going to tell you what she needs. And don't diminish what she's telling you. And if you have just done that exercise, you've just taken a moment and you've done that, share it in the comments, because I'd love to hear what your private self has told you. And right now in your life, which one's louder? Okay. Is it the functional nurse the world relies on, or the private self who's quietly exhausted? And if it is the functional nurse the world relies on, I bet when you just did that exercise where you just spoke to your private self, your inner girl, your inner female, I bet the functional nurse overtook what the private self was trying to tell you. Okay, I bet the functional nurse was probably telling you you've got to go to shift, okay, at 2:30. You need to get dinner ready before you go. Is your uniform ready? What's the shift going to be like? Okay. Private, the functional nurse side of you is probably saying, oh, I don't have time to sit still. Got so much to do. So share with us. Is the functional nurse louder, or is the private self louder? And then at some point, most nurses will get to a threshold moment, okay? And it can be a dramatic event, but not usually. It can look like this. It tends to look more like this, sitting in a car shift after shift, feeling nothing. You're not tired. You're not angry. You're nothing. Maybe you're struggling to walk into your shift. Your emotional range has narrowed down to flat. You're snapping at people who you love the most, and recognize immediately that the shift didn't stay at work. It came home with you. And it just found somewhere else to redirect that energy, those feelings. Your body starts to push back. Sleep is not restored. Pain that does not resolve. Signals that can no longer be overridden the way they used to be. The quiet thought that keeps returning. I cannot keep living like this. Or maybe she's saying things are going to get better after this surge of patients, after winter, when we get more staff, when I take that holiday. It's okay. I've got 3 days off. I'll rest then. So she doesn't know what to do. She just knows that she cannot make it stop arriving. And that moment is not weakness. It is the beginning of awareness. It is the nervous system fully communicating loud enough that it can no longer be talked over. And that's where real grief begins, okay? Because you do have to mourn that version of you. And you're not grieving nursing. You are grieving the version of yourself that was built inside it. So what people won't tell you is when a nurse finally starts questioning whether she can keep going the way she has been, that what arrives next is relief, clarity, permission. But it's not, it's grief. And it is not nursing she's grieving. She's grieving a version of herself that was built inside of nursing. The nurse who pushed through, who showed up when she had nothing left to give, who gave everything and called the giving professionalism, because that is the only language the profession ever offered her for what she was doing. So the version is not wrong. She's not something to be ashamed of or discarded. She did the best she could with what she had inside a system that demanded everything and gave very little back in return. That version of her was built under duress, and now her nervous system is gently and insistently asking whether there's another version available, one that's not built inside depletion, one that is not assembled under emergency conditions. So the grief is real. It deserves to be named. It's not minimized. It is not the full picture, because here's the reframe. You're not losing yourself. You are meeting yourself, possibly for the first time in years. And it's not an ending. It's an identity invitation. So we reframe how we look at it. Okay. You are meeting yourself. The calm matriarch. This is the nurse on the other side of the threshold. Okay. She's not louder. She's steadier. She's not become someone else. She's just returned to herself. She's grounded. She's self-led. She still cares deeply. But she no longer self-abandons herself in order to demonstrate care. Her characteristics: grounded authority. So she knows that she doesn't need to prove herself. Her competence speaks without her having to perform it. She's got a regulated nervous system, so she responds rather than react. There's a space between the trigger and the action. Herself is first without guilt. She nourishes herself before she nourishes anybody else. So she fills her cup. She puts her own oxygen mask on first. She understands that she cannot pour from a depleted source indefinitely. She has boundary compassion. She'll care without rescuing someone. She can hold space for someone's pain without absorbing it as her responsibility to fix. She understands that it's not her responsibility to fix others. Discernment, so she chooses intentionally. Where the survival nurse says yes automatically, the calm matriarch pauses long enough to ask whether this is something for her to carry. Okay? She's got an integrated identity. She's not defined by her role. Nursing is something that she does, even if she does it brilliantly. It is not the entirety of who she is. Capacity for rest. So she understands that rest is essential, not indulgent. So she doesn't need to earn the right to stop. Okay? Generational leadership. So she models emotional safety for her children and her community. So the work that she does on herself ripples onwards in ways many people see. And I think that's the most important aspect in the calm matriarch, is modeling emotional safety. You will see her. You will feel her before she comes through the door. She has a different aura about her. In practical terms, her days include space, so intentional, chosen, unapologetic space. Now, when I'm talking about this, she's not spending 5 hours meditating or breath work or all of that sort of stuff. Okay? When I became the calm matriarch in the beginning, there was a lot of stuff that I do, but she finds ways that work for her. Okay? 5 minutes meditation in the morning. Some songs and dancing to get the day started. Maybe it's going to the sauna. Maybe it's going for a swim. Maybe it's just going for a walk. Maybe it's sitting outside and just having your cup of coffee in quiet. Okay? Maybe it's taking a couple of deep breaths. You will find what works for you. And what works for some may not work for others. Okay? She's present with the people she loves. She doesn't manage them. She may still be a nurse. She may have reshaped the way she works. Either is valid. But the most important thing is nursing no longer consumes her identity or her health. She makes decisions aligned with her body and her values, not the organization's values. And those decisions don't come from urgency or guilt. She doesn't feel guilty for putting herself and her needs first. And she doesn't rush to rescue adults who are entirely capable of making their own choices. As I said, it is not your responsibility to fix others. Okay? Her presence feels safe, warm, steady. People can feel the difference around her, even if they cannot articulate why. She's not perfect. She's just integrated. And so both patterns have a shadow, okay? So the calm matriarch, like I said, she's not perfect. And the shadow is a way that we can tell that the pattern goes sideways when it's not held with awareness. So the survival nurse shadow is one of the most that we already know intimately. Overgiving until resentment quietly builds, people pleasing that erodes self-trust over time, appearing fine until the appearance collapses all at once. And the calm matriarch, her shadow is a little subtle, but equally real. She can become so independent that connection starts to feel unnecessary. So she'll start to protect her peace so fiercely that she withdraws emotionally because she doesn't want to go back to that survival nurse. She'll set boundaries that without awareness classify into walls. And they're not failing. Neither of those shadows are failing. It's just the edges of the pattern. And it's just to be aware of the goal. Now, there are times that you can flick through the survival nurse and the calm matriarch. There are times when the I like to call it the itty bitty shitty committee, you know, the negative Nancy in your voice, will overpower the calm matriarch, and then all of these things start to pop back in. And this is where integrating our practices, our meditations, our affirmations, whatever it is that we do to keep us regulated is important. And over time, that voice will become smaller and smaller because we know and we understand that our health and our self is paramount to be able to show up in the world. So before we finish, reflect on it. Which archetype do you feel like you're living right now? The survival nurse who is holding everything together. So the first photo is me. That was taken in November of 2024. I was on my way to my very first retreat. I didn't know what was happening. I was in a lot of pain. I was on a lot of medication, wasn't sleeping. Okay. I was the person, even though I'd hit burnout and rock bottom and struggled to get through the day, I always still put somebody else's needs first. I was running on adrenaline. I was feeling disconnected from myself. Okay. And then when you do the work, this was taken in December the 2nd, the calm matriarch, December of 2025. So just over 12 months of doing the work. Okay. I didn't know at the time when I became the calm matriarch. I knew that I felt different. People told me I felt different, but I didn't realize how big the changes actually happened till I looked at the photos. So grounded, clear, self-led, confident, emotionally steady. So what are you living right now? Are you the survival nurse or the matriarch? How do we move from the survival nurse to the calm matriarch? Which is a really good question, okay? Because you just don't wake up one day. And so these are 3 things that we have to rebuild. And these are the 3 things that nursing has robbed us. Our confidence, we have to learn to build self-trust. We have to have nervous system safety and emotional steadiness. These are all things that the profession conditioned out of us. Boundaries and self-advocacy. We need to relearn how to set healthy boundaries, how to protect our energy, how to stop abandoning ourselves to keep everyone else happy and comfortable. And health. That is our number 1 priority. Reconnecting to our body, to our nervous system, to our well-being before survival mode becomes permanent state. Now, they don't have to all come at once. We just slowly work on each pillar, okay? And we slowly put tools in. So awareness is where every shift begins, okay? And this is where we need to have awareness of what is happening for us. You are so much more than the uniform. Write that down. Pop it on your fridge so that every time you walk past it, put it on the mirror, put it on the back of the toilet door, put it on the back of your door when you walk out. You are so much more than the uniform. The uniform is something you wear into a building for a shift. It is not the shape of your entire identity, even though the profession has trained you to experience that way. So if today names something in you, if you recognized yourself from somewhere in the survival nurse, or you felt the pull towards who the calm matriarch is, I want to invite you into the next step, the real shift. And this is why I created this program, Beyond the Bedside. So it's not just a 6-week group program, it's a guided journey for nurses who are ready to stop surviving and start living themselves differently. So together we rebuild what years of caring for everyone else that has eroded. So your confidence, your voice, your boundaries, your nervous system, your relationship with self. You're going to be surrounded by other women who understand your world because they're living it too. Women who are no longer willing to accept the exhaustion as the price of being a good nurse. So this is where awareness becomes action, where insight becomes lasting change, and where the survival nurse begins to become the calm matriarch. So we're starting on Thursday, August 6th. This is our first group session. It's almost 7 weeks because every woman who invests will have a private one-on-one boarding session with me, okay? And when we do that session, we're having a chat. We're understanding where you're currently at. We're understanding what is going well for you in your life. We're putting in the foundations. We're having a look at what your values are before you even start. We're having a look at what goals you are. And if you don't have goals, that's okay. Because quite often when I meet someone for the first time, I will ask them, do you have goals that you want to achieve in the next 6 months or the next 12 months? And they don't, because they can't think outside the shift work or the uniform. And many of them deep down have something amazing that they want to achieve, but they just don't know how, or don't think the system has robbed them of their confidence. So that session alone is very important. And when we do that session, this allows you to arrive feeling clear, supported, and ready. So this is the first time I'm offering this program. So it's a beta cohort, and I'm keeping it small. I'm only offering 6 spots, okay, because I want every nurse every woman to feel seen, heard, and coached personally by me. And if you've been waiting for permission to choose yourself, this is it. So like I said, it's not another course, okay? We're going to rebuild your confidence. We're going to rebuild self-trust, nervous system safety, emotional steadiness, profession conditioned out of you. We're going to set some boundaries, okay? We're going to learn how to protect our energy and stop abandoning ourselves instead of putting everybody else's needs first. And we're going to reconnect to our health, okay? We're going to learn to listen to our body. And if it's gut health that you need to work on, we're going to do that. It's individual to you. If you've got comorbidities, we're going to look at those. If you've got hypertension, if you're overweight, we can look at those. I have a whole toolbox full of resources that will help you and support you to bring your health back to optimum levels. So what's included? Okay, you're going to get that 60-minute private onboarding session. You're going to get 6 live coaching calls. You're going to get somatic practices, breath work, guided journaling. You're going to get community. Every call is recorded, okay? You're going to get access to my whole database of resources that I've created. Plus, there's lots of bonuses. There's weekly inner voice scans, frequency tuning, bioresonance. There's so much there that it's going to be exciting. Hot seat coaching for every call, okay? Inner circle. So drop it in the comments here, okay? What has staying the same already cost you? So imagine 6 weeks from today and you invest in the program. You're sleeping better. You're saying no without guilt. You're leaving work at work. You trust yourself again and you feel like yourself. Can you imagine what that looks like? Pop it in the comments. So the investment, $997. This is the first and only time that I will be offering it at this price. the price goes up to $1,997 for the next cohort, for the next intake. 3 payments, so there is payment plans available, 3 payments of $370. If that doesn't work for you, reach out and book a call and we'll discuss it. Okay, we'll make something work for you, because I want everyone to access this, because you deserve it. And you didn't become a nurse to lose yourself. And it's important that you don't have to find your way back alone. Okay, so click on the QR code. Mariah has already popped the link as well into the comments. And Mariah is also going to pop the link in for, just looking at some of the comments here, for the quiz, the survival nurse quiz. It seems that my comments aren't coming through, so I may just have to reply to those after our masterclass. But I can see that people have resonated with what I'm saying. Yeah. So people are resonating, okay, with everything that I've said. Where do you think you're sitting? Are you a calm matriarch, or are you the survival nurse? And remember this, okay? Write this down. You are so much more than the uniform. Own it. Believe it. Integrate it into yourself, into your being, into your life. And I want to thank you for joining us, okay? Because every week we go live with The Real Shift every Thursday, and everyone is relating to the content that I'm presenting. And I want to thank you for being honest with what you're experiencing, because that is not an easy task. Okay? And just know that if you're experiencing that, someone else is experiencing it as well. So you're not alone. And join us next week for episode 5 of The Real Shift. This one's a good one. Your voice was never the problem. The system matters. The system was. So we're actually looking at communication and why we soften our voice at work, or why we feel like we can't speak up without guilt. And don't forget, if you know someone who would benefit from this work, invite them to the Empowered Nurse Collective. Because the more nurses and the more that we spread this work, the more that we can actually make a difference inside nursing. I am going to leave it there for now. Thank you for joining us, and I will catch you all next week. Bye for now.